Part 1. The Stranger at the Door. I was having dinner with my daughter, Anina, enjoying some hearty beef stew, the kind that warms you from the inside out, when the front door suddenly swung inward with a jarring clatter. And there, standing in the cold doorway, silhouetted against the porch light, was my real, biological daughter. My name is Raiden Miller. I'm 67 years old, a retired National Park Service ranger, and my world still felt off its axis. It had been a little over 2 years since my wife Eleanor passed away suddenly from a massive stroke. This old, inherited 3-bedroom house in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood of East Baltimore, Maryland, felt unbearably large for just me. Every corner was saturated with Eleanor's ghost. The scent of her jasmine perfume still seemed to linger in the walk-in closet. The kitchen tiles still held the faint memory of flour from when she used to bake her award-winning apple pies for the neighborhood bake sales. The front porch, with its worn wooden swing, was where she carefully watered her prized hydrangeas every single morning. Even the master bedroom now felt like an icebox without her gentle snoring and soft prayers before dawn. I missed her so much my chest ached. My ranger pension was sufficient for a comfortable, simple life. I wasn't wealthy, but I wasn't wanting. However, money is useless when it comes to filling the profound emptiness of loss. 5 months ago, a young woman arrived from Denver, Colorado. Her name was Anina, and she looked almost exactly like my daughter Anina when she was in college. She told me a heartbreaking story about being Eleanor's distant cousin, and how she had heard I was struggling after my wife's death. She claimed my only child, my daughter Anina, who lives far away, had called her, concerned about my well-being. Since that day, she moved in, and the house had certainly brightened. She cooked, scrubbed the house until it shone, and even politely joined me for Bible study at the local church every Friday night. I was so relieved and grateful to have a child figure looking out for me. I thought she was a blessing. That evening, Anina, the one who lived with me, had cooked her specialty beef stew, claiming it was an old family recipe passed down from Eleanor's side. The rich, savory aroma of slow-cooked beef and herbs filled the dining area. She had even dressed up for the occasion, wearing a beautiful, faintly yellowed, off-white dress of Eleanor's, the one with the intricate lace embroidery on the bodice. The table was set with Eleanor's antique Limoges dinner plates, and a small, flickering candle cast a soft, gentle glow over the meal. "If your mother were still here, she'd be so happy to see this," I murmured, staring into the deep red-brown color of the stew. My eyes were burning, but I clenched my jaw, refusing to cry. Anina smiled softly, her eyes glistening in the candlelight. "Mom is always here, Dad, especially when we share a meal like this." I took a deep breath, feeling a fleeting moment of that old, cherished warmth. But the moment was abruptly shattered. My heavy-duty cell phone, sitting on the tablecloth, began to vibrate violently. The screen displayed a strange, private number. A simple, yet instantly unnerving text message flashed on the screen. "Turn on your camera. Something will happen tonight." I frowned, my concentration gone. Who the heck was this? Why did my heart suddenly feel like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest? "What's wrong, Dad?" "What is it?" Anina asked, extending her hand slightly, seemingly ready to read the message over my shoulder. Without thinking, I jerked the phone away. "It's nothing. Just some kind of weird spam." Anina's gaze lingered on me. It felt too long, too deep. Her dark eyes seemed to be searching my face, trying to decipher the unread message. The pleasant atmosphere evaporated instantly. The warmth I'd just felt was replaced by a sudden, inexplicable chill. Before I could process the message, or Anina's strange look, a terrifying pounding erupted at the front door. It wasn't just a knock. It was a desperate, chaotic hammering, like someone in a panic. Anina sprang up, her face draining of colour. "Who is that? At this hour?" I slowly got to my feet. My legs felt like lead weights. A primal voice in my mind screamed that tonight, the routine piece of my life was about to end. As I hesitated, the knocking grew louder. Taking one last look at Anina, who stood frozen by the table, I pulled open the heavy oak door. A young woman was standing there. Her face was strikingly similar to the Anina standing in my dining room, uncannily so. She was soaking wet from the rain, her breath coming in fast, sharp gasps. A large, heavy hiking backpack slung across her thin shoulders. "Dad," she gasped out, her voice cracking with exhaustion and fear. "It's me, Anina, your daughter. Why did you block my calls for 2 weeks? What is going on?" My entire world ground to a painful halt. My skull felt as though it was splitting apart. I looked wildly at the frantic woman at the door, then whipped my head back to the Anina standing motionless by the dinner table. 2 Aninas. One outside, soaking wet and enraged, one inside, silent and pale. The Anina from the door, my true daughter, shoved past me and stormed into the living room. Her eyes locked onto the woman by the table like laser beams. "Who the hell are you?" she screamed, her voice a raw sound of fury and betrayal. The Anina inside, the woman I had sheltered and trusted for 5 months, the one who cooked the stew and wore Eleanor's dress, stammered, trying to sound soothing. "Please, just stay calm. I'm sure we can clear this up. I can explain everything." But my real daughter was beyond reason. She moved toward the table, her eyes suddenly filling with genuine tears of distress. "Dad, it's the real Anina. I've been working on a contract in Denver, but days ago my bank account was completely frozen due to alleged identity theft and fraud using your information. I tried calling you hundreds of times, but my number was suddenly blocked. I took the first train out of Colorado to get here." My head was spinning so violently I had to grab the doorframe to keep steady. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely see them. "You? Which Anina are you?" The woman by the door instantly pulled out her driver's license and handed it to me. The name, the photo, the date of birth, everything matched. This was my flesh and blood. My only child. If she was Anina, then the other woman, the one who had lived with me for nearly half a year, was an imposter. I looked at the woman by the table. She still stood rigid, her face ghostly white, her lips trembling. "Dad, please, I can explain. I told you, I'm a distant cousin from Eleanor's side, Amanda. I only came to help you after Mom died. You were so frail, you needed company, and I couldn't just abandon you." "Cousin?" The real Anina's voice was a low growl. "My mother never, ever mentioned a cousin named..." She narrowed her eyes, studying the imposter with cold suspicion. "Tell us your real name, right now." The woman, Amanda, hesitated, her composure cracking. Then, her voice breaking, she admitted, "My name is Amanda Sellers. I'm Eleanor's distant cousin. I only came for a visit, but when I saw how you were, alone, the house, a mess, you weren't taking your medication, I just couldn't leave." Amanda's story, delivered with such practiced softness and apparent emotion, might have been convincing a moment earlier, but the overwhelming realization was a harsh light on her pretense. The real Anina ignored her. She stormed over to the small antique desk in the corner and yanked open the drawer. She pulled out a thick wad of papers, photocopies of the deed to this house, the registration title for my Ford Fusion, which I hadn't seen in a month, and a few partially shredded credit union envelopes. "Dad, look at this!" Anina cried, her eyes wide with terror, holding the papers up. Why is our house deed copied? Why is your car title here? Why were these bank papers destroyed? I was paralyzed. My throat was too dry to speak, and Nina fixed a terrifying stare on Amanda. Are you going to talk, or do I call the police and the FBI right now? Amanda recoiled, taking a small, fearful step backward. Tears finally began to stream down her face, but they were tears of pure panic, not sympathy. I finally found my feet and stumbled toward Amanda's small bag resting near the armchair. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I opened the zipper. Inside, buried beneath a sweater, I found a crisp, official-looking cashier's check for $75,000. $75,000. The signature on the bottom line was unquestionably mine, but I knew deep in my soul that I had never, ever written, signed, or authorized it. I looked up at Amanda, and all the rage, the betrayal, and the profound, crushing disappointment hit me at once. "This is my signature," I said, my voice barely a whisper, a sound of utter defeat. "But I never wrote this check." Amanda dropped her gaze, her body quivering. She remained silent. Anina took a threatening step closer. "You've got nothing left. You've been lying to my father for 5 months. What exactly was your end game?" Before Amanda could respond, she bolted. She made a dash for the kitchen like a professional sprinter. Anina and I could only watch for a split second before we reacted and chased her. But by the time we reached the kitchen, the room was empty. The back door was wide open, slamming gently in the breeze. The cold night air poured in. Amanda Sellers had vanished into the night, leaving behind a ruined dinner, a trembling old man, and a gaping void of unanswered questions. Part 2. The Truth in the Ledger. I didn't sleep a wink that entire night. I sat hunched over in my old recliner in the living room, gripping the cashier's check tightly. My signature was undeniably there, printed clearly on the document, yet I swore I had never put it there. How was this possible? My mind was a dizzying loop of questions with no answers. My real daughter, Anina, decided to stay. She slept in the guest room, but I knew she wasn't truly resting. I could hear the muffled sound of her pacing back and forth. The next morning, after the sun had barely crested the rooftops, Anina sat beside me. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, but her gaze was resolute. "Dad, we have to go to the credit union right now." I simply nodded. There was no other choice. We left that very morning for the Union Bank and Trust branch downtown, on Main Street. I had maintained my retirement accounts there for decades. Mrs. Williams, the senior loan officer, had been a good friend of my late wife, Eleanor, and had often visited the house for paperwork concerning my pension. When we arrived, Mrs. Williams greeted me with a warm, familiar smile. That smile instantly vanished the moment I handed her the cashier's check and tried to explain the night's unsettling events. "Mr. Miller, please wait a moment while I check the records," she said, her voice now tight with concern. She typed rapidly on her computer, her fingers flying over the keys. But then her face changed. Her eyebrows knitted together, and her lips parted slightly, as if she were witnessing something completely unbelievable. "Sir, I'm afraid this is difficult," she whispered slowly. "But you are currently the active borrower on several very substantial loans." Anina immediately stood up. "What kind of loans are you talking about, Mrs. Williams?" Mrs. Williams stared worriedly at the computer screen. "There are several loans registered under Mr. Raiden Miller's name, and the amounts are quite significant." My heart seemed to stop for a second. "How significant?" Mrs. Williams took a deep, shaky breath. "A mortgage loan for the house, valued at $1.5 million. Your home was used as collateral. Then, There are 2 active credit cards, each with a $100,000 limit, a car loan for 1 Chevy Tahoe SUV and 2 Harley-Davidson motorcycles, all in your name. And the largest one, a personal multi-purpose loan for $2 million that was disbursed just 3 months ago. I couldn't breathe. $1.5 million, $2 million. I had never applied for such loans. I had never even considered accumulating that much debt. This is impossible, I stammered, my voice trembling. I never submitted those applications. Mrs. Williams turned the monitor toward me. Displayed on the screen were loan documents showing my signature, an electronic fingerprint scan, and even a photo of me holding my driver's license. Everything looked completely legitimate. Anina covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. Dad, this must be Amanda's work. Mrs. Williams nodded slowly. All these loans were processed through our express track because your credit reputation is pristine, Mr. Miller. The supporting documentation was perfect. Driver's license, social security, card, neighborhood reference letters, even notarized powers of attorney. It all seemed valid. But then Mrs. Williams squinted, looking closer at the screen. Wait, there's something strange here. The email address and cell phone number registered for these loans are different from the ones you originally provided. She stood up. I need to call our IT department to check this further. Minutes later, a young man from IT arrived. He opened the system and cross-referenced the fingerprint data. His face grew serious as he examined the log history. Mr. Miller, he said, looking at me. The first loan application was initiated about 9 months ago. That's when you were hospitalized with that mild stroke, right? Anina looked at me instantly. I nodded slowly. That's right. 9 months ago, I was hospitalized for almost 2 weeks. I was weak, couldn't move much. And that was around the time Amanda first showed up, Anina whispered, her voice laced with dread. She said she was visiting. All these applications were processed using photos of you lying. In the hospital bed, the IT guy continued, pointing at the screen. We don't know how those photos were obtained, and even more suspicious, the account number for the loan disbursement leads to an account under the name Andy S. It's a name very similar to Anina Miller. Anina clenched her fists. She used a similar name, so if anyone checked, it would look plausible. Mrs. Williams looked at us with deep sympathy. She stood and motioned for me to follow her. We walked to a secluded corner of the waiting area. Sir, this is not an isolated case, she whispered softly. Last week, we had another client, also a retiree. The pattern was identical. The perpetrator was also a young woman claiming to be family. I suspect this is the work of an organized group. She quietly handed me a photocopy of a document. It listed 3 different names, but the loan application pattern was identical. All were retirees, all had children, living far away or lived alone, and all had fallen victim within the last year. I returned to my seat, feeling hollow. Anina looked at me, her eyes desperate. Dad, what is the total damage? Mrs. Williams answered, her voice heavy. $3.5 million, Mr. Miller, and if this is not legally addressed immediately, your house could be foreclosed upon in the next 3 months due to non-payment. $3.5 million. The number echoed in my head like a death toll. This inherited home, where Eleanor and I built our life, could be lost. All the memories of Eleanor could simply vanish. Anina gripped my hand tightly. Dad, this isn't just about money. This is about our life, Mom's honor, and the family name. I stared at the check in my hand. A signature that was mine, but wasn't. I felt like a puppet, manipulated by my own misplaced trust. For so long, I thought I was still in control of my life. It turned out I was just a tool for someone who expertly preyed on my loneliness. I began to recall all the strange little moments over the last 9 months. My ATM card disappearing briefly, only to reappear in my wallet without explanation, my medication frequently being in different packaging, even though I hadn't bought new ones, my pension envelopes occasionally feeling thinner than usual, but I thought I'd just miscalculated. It all made perfect, sickening sense now. Every moment was a calculated step in a grand plan orchestrated from the start. "Dad," Anina said, holding my arm. "We have to report this to the police." I nodded, but before I could speak, Anina continued in a softer tone. "But before we do that, there's someone you need to meet. His name is Mr. Harrison. He was a close friend of Mum's from her time working at the ranger station. He's a private investigator now. He can help us." A private investigator. I never thought my life would require one. But now, I had no choice. We walked out of the bank with heavy steps. The sun was high, but I felt cold to the bone. The world felt alien. I no longer knew who I could trust. I thought I was just an easy-to-fool old man. It turned out I was just a man who put his faith in the wrong person and severely misunderstood affection. We drove home feeling utterly destroyed. The house that had once felt warm now felt like a haunted space. Every corner seemed suspicious. Anina immediately headed for the guest room where Amanda had stayed. The door was wide open. The bed was still messy, like someone had fled in a hurry. "Dad, look at this!" Anina called from inside. I walked in. Anina was rummaging through the small nightstand drawer. It was littered with papers, partially printed powers of attorney, photocopies of my electronic, driver's license data, and even photos of me taken while I was in the hospital. The photos were taken without my knowledge. My face looked frail, my eyes half closed, like I was unconscious. In a plastic folder left behind, Anina found the other half of the shredded credit union envelope. The remaining piece was still stuck to the bottom of the drawer. "She was so careful," Anina murmured, examining the envelope. "But she was in too much of a rush to escape, and she missed a few things." Then I remembered something crucial. The security camera. Anina looked up. "You have a security camera, Dad? Your mother insisted on installing it years ago, just in case of a break-in." "It's been broken for years, though." "But the backup data storage," I exclaimed. "I kept it in the cabinet beneath the TV." We rushed to the living room and quickly opened the cabinet. The data storage device was there, gathering dust. Anina connected the device to her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. A few moments later, the screen displayed a folder of recordings from 7 months ago. We played the footage. It was grainy black and white, slightly blurry, but clear enough. And what we saw made my blood run cold. Amanda was clearly visible, photographing the document shelf that held the house deed and my social security card. She was meticulous, ensuring no one could see. In another recording, she snapped a photo of me while I was sleeping on the sofa. I looked completely vulnerable. Then, she sat on the floor with her laptop, diligently filling out online forms. Her face was calm, like she was doing routine paperwork. Anina was trembling as she watched the footage. "She planned this from the very beginning, Dad. Even when we thought she was helping you." I couldn't speak. My throat was tight. The mixture of rage, sorrow, and deep shame was overwhelming. How could I have been so blind? How could I have suspected nothing? Anina held my hand firmly. "Dad, this is not your fault. She is a professional manipulator. Now, we have to go see Mr. Harrison. He can help us fight back." That afternoon, we headed to Mr. Harrison's office. His office was on the second floor of an old building in the Old Town district, above a bakery. A faded sign read, "Harrison Investigations and Consulting." The paint on the walls was peeling, but the room itself was neat and orderly. Mr. Harrison greeted us with a firm, warm handshake. He was a man in his early 50s, with greying hair at the temples. Thick glasses sat on his nose. His eyes were sharp, like a man used to observing the smallest details. "Mr. Miller, Anina told me what happened. I am truly sorry," he said, ushering us into chairs. "Eleanor was a good friend when we worked together. I won't let her memory be tarnished like this." We told him everything, from Amanda's arrival and the fake warmth she provided to the devastating revelations at the bank this morning. Mr. Harrison listened intently, occasionally jotting notes in a small notebook. When we finished, Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair. "This isn't the first case I've handled with this pattern. A few months ago, another client of mine was victimized. The perpetrator was a young woman, also claiming to be family, who moved in and slowly bled the victim dry." "So this is a syndicate?" Anina asked. Mr. Harrison nodded. "Most likely they have a mentor, usually someone with a background in banking or law. They know the loopholes in the system. They know how to create fake documents that look legitimate, and most importantly, they know how to play on the victim's emotions." My chest tightened painfully. So I really was just a puppet. Mr. Harrison looked at me with empathy. "Mr. Miller, this isn't about you being weak. This is about them being evil and clever. But now, we can fight back. I have a plan." "A plan?" Anina asked. Mr. Harrison opened his laptop and displayed a digital map of the Baltimore area. "Amanda hasn't gone far. People like her don't immediately leave the state. She still has assets to liquidate, accounts to access. She will come back, and we'll be waiting." "How?" I asked. "We set a trap," Mr. Harrison said, a slight cold smile touching his lips. "We make her feel safe enough to return. Then we catch her in the act. But for that, Mr. Miller, you have to be ready to act," he concluded. "You have to be ready to play a role." I swallowed hard. Play a role. I was not a good liar. But for justice, for Eleanor's honor, and for my future, I had to try. Part 3. The Trap and the Verdict. 3 days later, Mr. Harrison's plan was put into motion. Anina sent a text message to Amanda's still active cell phone number. The message was simple but designed to trigger her greed. "Dad is critically ill. He's confused and keeps asking for you. He wants to apologize and see you one last time." We waited 1 hour, 2 hours, with agonizing tension. No reply. But Mr. Harrison remained calm. "She's read it. She's just calculating the risk." That evening, a text message finally arrived, but from a different, untraceable number. "Where is the real Anina now?" Mr. Harrison smiled thinly. She took the bait. "Now, we reel her in." Anina immediately replied. "She had to go back to work in Denver. I'm alone here with Dad. Please come. He's getting worse." The response was immediate and confident. "I'll be there tomorrow morning." The following morning, we prepared everything. Mr. Harrison meticulously installed tiny surveillance cameras in the living room corners, hidden behind picture frames. He also placed a discreet voice recorder beneath the coffee table. Everything had to look completely normal, like an ordinary home, not a meticulously staged trap. "Mr. Miller, the most important thing is to stay calm," Mr. Harrison instructed, checking the final camera angle. "Let her talk. Make her feel secure. We need a confession. If she confesses on camera, it's airtight evidence for the police." Anina had to leave as planned. She pretended to drive back to Denver to eliminate any threat in Amanda's eyes. But, in reality, she was hiding at Mr. Harrison's satellite office nearby, monitoring the live feed from the laptop. By 9 a.m., I was sitting alone in the living room. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I kept reviewing Mr. Harrison's instructions. Stay calm. Don't rush. Let her speak more. At 9:08 a.m., the doorbell chimed. I walked slowly to the door. As I opened it, Amanda stood there. Her face was slightly drawn, but her smile, that sweet, familiar smile that had once convinced me of her sincerity, was back. "Dad," she said, her voice soft and full of concern. "I heard you were sick. I was so worried. I let her into the house." We sat down in the living room. Amanda placed her small bag on the sofa and looked at me with what seemed to be genuine worry in her eyes. "Dad, I am so sorry about that night," she began, taking my hand. "I just panicked. I was afraid you'd misunderstand." I pulled my hand away gently. "Amanda, I just want to know one thing. Why did you do all of this?" Amanda's expression shifted subtly, but she quickly covered it with a practiced smile. "Do what, Dad? I only wanted to help you. I didn't want you to be lonely." "Then why did you have a check with my signature? Why were the house deeds photocopied? Why are there $3.5 million in loans under my name?" Amanda went silent. Her smile slowly faded. She looked at me with a completely different gaze, cold, cornered. "You already know, don't you?" she said quietly, her voice no longer sweet. "Who told you? Anina? Or did you go to the credit union?" I offered no answer, simply staring at her. Amanda let out a small, humorless laugh. "You know, Dad, I'm not a bad person. I just took what was owed to me. Eleanor's family cut us off years ago. We lived in poverty while you were comfortable in this big house. So, I just took back what should have been ours." Her words were a sharp slap across my face. So, this was about a family vendetta. Amanda stood and walked to the window. "And you know what the funniest part is? You opened the door for me. You trusted me without checking. Whose fault is that, really?" I felt a surge of anger, but I held firm. "Stay calm. The camera is recording." Suddenly, 3 hard, authoritative knocks echoed from the front door, followed by a loud voice. "Amanda Sellers! Open up! This is the U.S. Marshals Service, Special Investigations Unit. We have a warrant for your arrest." Amanda froze, her eyes wide, her face instantly drained of all color. She looked at the door, then back at me with blazing hatred. "You called them?" She stammered, her voice shaking violently. "You would do this?" I remained silent, standing my ground, feeling a complicated mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that the truth was finally coming out, and sorrow that the person I had treated like a daughter was truly a viper in my home. Amanda suddenly ran toward the back balcony. She aggressively slid open the glass door, frantically looking for a way out. But when she looked down, she stopped. My house was only a single story. There was no escape, but back inside. She quickly shut the curtains, grabbed her bag, and fumbled to wipe something from her phone screen with trembling hands. But before she could act, the kitchen door swung open. 2 plainclothes officers were standing there. One of them showed his police identification. "Don't move," he commanded, his tone calm but firm. Amanda screamed in frustration. She looked at me, her eyes burning with pure malice. "You're a wicked man! You would ruin my life over a little misunderstanding?" My chest tightened. Hearing that, she called $3.5 million in debt a little misunderstanding. The marshals who had knocked on the front door finally entered after I let them in. 3 of them, 2 men and 1 woman. The lead inspector, Agent Hart, with his name badge prominently displayed, showed Amanda the arrest warrant. "Miss Amanda Sellers, you are being arrested on charges of fraud, forgery of documents, and asset theft." You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Amanda tried to struggle. This is all a mistake. I didn't do anything. Mr. Miller asked me to handle all that paperwork. Agent Hart was unmoved. We have sufficient evidence. Please come with us peacefully. The female officer began to inventory Amanda's belongings, the document map. In her bag, the small laptop hidden in an inside pocket, her cell phone. They even found a tiny flash drive containing files concealed in her jacket pocket. I was asked to sit on the sofa. One of the officers handed me a glass of water. My hand was still shaking as I accepted it. The entire sequence felt like a nightmare that had finally ended, but left a lasting wound. Mr. Harrison walked into the room once the situation was secured. He nodded at me, his expression calm but piercing. It's all recorded clearly, Mr. Miller. Her confession about the family vendetta, the rights she felt she was owed, all on camera. This is powerful evidence. Amanda stared at Mr. Harrison in shock. So, this whole thing was a set-up? You planned all of this? Mr. Harrison gave no reply, just a cold, steady look. Before being taken to the police station, Agent Hart asked Amanda for an initial statement. She was seated at the dining table, flanked by 2 officers. I sat facing her, separated by the small table where we had shared the stew the night before. Miss Sellers, we want to know your motive. Why did you do all of this? Agent Hart asked, opening his notebook. Amanda was silent for a moment. Then she suddenly exploded. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of fury, not regret. Motive? You want to know my motive? She yelled, her voice trembling. I was just taking what should have been mine. My father died poor while Mr. Miller lived comfortably in this large inherited house. Eleanor's family treated us like trash. We got nothing. So I took back my rights. Agent Hart carefully noted her words. So, this is a family vendetta. Vendetta? Amanda laughed bitterly. This is not a vendetta. This is justice. Eleanor had a half-sister, my mother. When their parents died, all the inheritance went to Eleanor. My mother got nothing. We lived in poverty while they had everything. Is that fair to you? My head throbbed. I knew nothing of this. Eleanor had only vaguely mentioned a half-sister she had lost touch with years ago. But that is no reason for fraud, Agent Hart stated firmly. You could have pursued legal recourse if you felt wronged. Not by doing this. Amanda shook her head hard. The legal route takes years and money I didn't have. This way was faster. And Mr. Miller himself opened the door for me. He trusted me without checking. So, who is the foolish one here? Her words stung, but I refused to let her win by demeaning me. You are right. I trusted you, I said slowly, but firmly. But not because I was foolish. Because I have a heart. Because I thought you were a human being with a conscience. I was wrong. Amanda looked at me blankly. There was no regret, only deep-seated anger. Agent Hart continued the interrogation. Did you work alone, or did someone assist you? Amanda bit her lip, debating whether to answer. We have evidence you were in contact with a man named Mr. Reynolds, a former real estate broker who has been involved in similar cases. It's better to be honest now, Agent Hart pressed. Amanda finally let out a long sigh. Yes, Mr. Reynolds showed me how. He told me the loopholes in the banking system. He created the fake documents, but I executed all of it myself. He was just a mentor. Where is Mr. Reynolds now? I don't know. He always changes his number. We last spoke a week ago. After that, he vanished. The female officer who had been examining Amanda's laptop suddenly called out, Agent Hart, there's something here. Agent Hart approached. On the laptop screen was a folder containing a list of names, about 15 of them, complete with photos, home addresses, phone numbers, and work history. All were elderly people, mostly retirees over the age of 60. "Is this your list of future targets?" Agent Hart asked. Amanda didn't answer, but her expression confirmed it. My blood boiled. I wasn't her only victim. She had planned to swindle others too. How many lonely seniors was she going to prey on? "You have no soul," I said, my voice trembling. "You preyed on people's grief. You stole their memories. You ruined their lives. And for what? Money." Amanda looked at me coldly. "To survive, to have a better life, to not live the life of poverty my mother did." "Your mother would be ashamed of you," I countered. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something change in Amanda's face, a tiny crack in her cold facade. But she quickly covered it. Agent Hart closed his notebook. "All right, Miss Sellers. We are taking you to the police station for further processing. Prepare yourself to face the legal consequences." The officers handcuffed Amanda. She was still looking at me as she stood. "Mr. Miller, one day you'll understand that the world isn't fair, and sometimes we have to take what we want in our own way." "No," I replied firmly. "The world may not be fair, but that's not an excuse to be evil. Your mother may have been treated unfairly, but that wasn't my fault. And it's no reason for you to destroy other people's lives." Amanda was led out, still shouting as they escorted her to the patrol car. "You're a family traitor! Everyone will know you were wrong." The car door slammed, muffling her voice. I stood on the porch, watching the police car slowly drive away. Mr. Harrison placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Mr. Miller. If you had stayed silent, many others would have become victims." I nodded, my heart still heavy. This victory felt hollow. There was no joy, only a profound sense of relief mixed with sadness. 3 weeks passed since Amanda's arrest. They felt like 3 years. Every day I tried to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. Anina decided to take a leave of absence from her job in Denver and stayed with me temporarily. She handled all the legal documentation, spoke with the lawyer, and ensured the legal process was moving forward. One morning, the mail carrier delivered an official brown envelope with the seal of the Baltimore County Courthouse. My hand trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a subpoena. I was required to appear as the key witness in the case of identity fraud, forgery, and asset theft against Amanda Sellers. The trial was scheduled for the following week. Anina, who read the letter with me, immediately called Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, the subpoena is here. The trial is next Thursday." Mr. Harrison would accompany us and had already prepared all the necessary evidence. The day of the trial finally arrived. I woke up early, prayed for strength and for justice for Eleanor. Mr. Harrison drove us to the courthouse. "Mr. Miller, you will be asked to testify. Just answer honestly and calmly. Do not get emotional. The judge will be observing how you speak," Mr. Harrison instructed. The courthouse was imposing and intimidating. The courtroom was small, with dark wood paneling that made the atmosphere feel serious and heavy. Anina and Mr. Harrison flanked me in the first row of spectators. A few journalists were there, as the case involving senior fraud had garnered media attention. Amanda entered, accompanied by 2 officers. She wore an orange jumpsuit. Her face was pale, devoid of makeup. She looked much thinner. She avoided looking at me entirely. The judge, a serious-looking woman in her 50s, rapped her gavel. The trial began. The prosecutor, a sharp young man, read the indictment, detailing how Amanda had approached me, built my trust, stole my documents, forged my signature, and applied for the $3.5 million in loans. Hearing it all laid out made me feel a deep, burning shame, but I forced myself to be strong. When the prosecutor finished, the judge called me forward. "Witness Raiden Miller, please approach." My legs were shaking as I walked to the witness stand. I swore to tell the truth and began my testimony. I recounted everything: Eleanor's death, the loneliness, Amanda's arrival, the fake affection, and the night of the revelation. "The most painful part," I said, my voice heavy with grief, "was not the money, but the trust. I trusted her like a daughter. I opened my home, I opened my heart, and she used all of it to destroy me." Amanda's defense attorney, a shrewd man, then cross-examined me. "Mr. Miller, is it true that you were the one who opened the door and allowed my client to stay?" "Yes," I answered. "Is it true you never suspected anything for 5 months?" "Yes, I did not suspect because I believed she was family. So, in fact, you bear some responsibility for being too trusting." The question felt like an accusation, but I stood firm. Trusting someone who claimed to be family is not a mistake. The mistake belongs to the person who exploited that trust to steal. You cannot blame the victim for having a heart. The judge even nodded in agreement. The trial continued, and a week later, the final verdict was delivered. I returned to the courthouse with a calmer heart, resigned to the outcome. The judge read the sentence in a clear, firm voice. The defendant, Amanda Sellers, is found guilty of the criminal offences of fraud, forgery of documents, and embezzlement. Therefore, the court sentences the defendant to 4 years in federal prison, the obligation to pay restitution of $3.5 million to the victim, and a lifetime ban on all banking access in the defendant's name. The gavel struck, signaling the final judgment. Amanda bowed her head, accepting her fate. We left the courthouse. The afternoon sun shone on my face. For the first time in weeks, I felt a measure of peace. Not happiness, but a quiet calm. Justice had been served. "You got through this, Mr. Miller," Mr. Harrison said, patting my shoulder. "Now it's time to rebuild your life." The days following the trial felt different. Not lighter, but different. A massive burden had been lifted, leaving a scar that still needed time to heal. Anina decided to stay with me for the foreseeable future. Her presence brought the house back to life. She opened a small little coffee and pastry stand on the front porch. Every morning, the aroma of fresh cinnamon rolls and brewing coffee filled the air. Neighbors started stopping by, and the once silent house often echoed with laughter and conversation. Mr. Harrison visited frequently, almost every morning, bringing the newspaper and 2 cups of coffee. We sat on the porch, discussing simple things: local politics, the weather, neighborhood gossip. Things that made life feel normal again. "Mr. Miller," Mr. Harrison said one morning, sipping his coffee. Amanda's case helped the police dismantle a much larger network. From her laptop and phone, they tracked down Mr. Reynolds and several other syndicate members. They were arrested last week. "Really?" I asked, my eyes widening slightly. Mr. Harrison nodded. They had been operating for nearly 3 years, victimizing dozens of people, mostly retirees like yourself. The total loss amounted to tens of millions of dollars. Your action of reporting Amanda not only saved yourself, but saved many other people. Hearing that, a huge weight lifted from my heart. At least everything I had gone through was not in vain. Months later, I received a call from my lawyer. The asset recovery process had begun. The bank had frozen all accounts linked to Amanda. Some of the assets bought with the loan money, the SUV and the motorcycles, were seized and would be auctioned. "But Mr. Miller, you need to be realistic. the lawyer cautioned. It's unlikely all the money will be recovered. At best, you might get back about 40 to 50% of the total loss. Still, $1.40 to $1.7 million was better than nothing. And most importantly, my home would not be foreclosed upon. That was enough. I shared the news with Anina and Mr. Harrison that night. Thank God, Anina sighed, smiling. At least the house is safe. And your reputation has been restored, Mr. Harrison added. The media reported you as the victim, not the perpetrator. That is crucial for your honor and Eleanor's memory. Hearing my wife's name, my chest felt tight. I walked to the shelf where Eleanor's photo was displayed. Eleanor, I whispered softly. I finally learned. Love isn't about letting everything slide. Sometimes, love means protecting our memories, protecting our good name. I hope you're proud. Anina stood behind me, hugging me. She is proud, Dad. That night, I sat at the table and opened Eleanor's old diary. It was filled with her beautiful handwriting, recipes, shopping lists, and prayers. I flipped to the last empty page, picked up a pen, and began to write. Today, I learned that silence is not weakness. Sometimes, silence is the deepest way to fight back. Silence while gathering evidence. Silence while planning for justice. And when the time comes, that silence becomes a trembling force of strength. I closed the book slowly, gazing out the window. The sky over Baltimore was full of stars. The scent of Anina's cinnamon rolls drifted from the kitchen. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Life moves on. Anina's stand is busy. I'm more active in the neighborhood, helping out at the church, sometimes playing chess with the retired teacher next door. One evening, while watering the porch flowers, a young reporter approached me. Excuse me, sir. We're doing a follow-up on senior scam artists. Could we interview you? I hesitated, but then I remembered Mr. Harrison's words. My story could help others. Yes, I finally replied. But I want to deliver one important message. Never be ashamed to be suspicious, I said into the camera. Never feel guilty for not instantly trusting someone who claims to be family. Verify their identity. Call other relatives. And most importantly, never give full access to your vital documents to anyone, not even someone you think is close. That interview aired a week later. Neighbors called to say they watched it and were proud of me. Several strangers reached out through Anina, saying my story saved them from becoming a victim. I felt that maybe this was God's way of giving meaning to all my suffering, to turn the wound into a lesson, to transform the pain into protection for others. That night, I opened Eleanor's small wooden jewelry box. The silver ring that Amanda had briefly stolen was returned by the police after being seized as evidence. I held the cold metal in my palm. Eleanor, I whispered, looking at her photo. I did my best. I fought for us, and I will keep our memories safe forever. Outside, the cicadas chirped. Anina was closing up her coffee stand. Mr. Harrison had just texted, asking if I wanted to join him for the men's meeting at the larger church tomorrow. Life will never be exactly the same, but life continues, and I choose to walk forward with my head held high, even though my heart still bears the scar. Because, in the end, justice is not about vengeance. Justice is about ensuring that evil does not prevail again. And that night, for the first time in a long, long while, I slept soundly, without nightmares, without cold sweats, only peaceful silence and the hope for a better tomorrow.